Today I'm here with Nathan. Nathan Chi.
Hello.
Nathan is in level 6, going to level 6 in Sogang. But also Nathan has a blog too, which has some really cool posts about traveling, but also what it's like to study at Sogang. More honest stuff than I would say.
Before I came here, I did find some blog posts that were pretty honest about like experience and like saying, oh, half the class failed, or this is difficult, that is difficult. But I feel like I try to just say it as it is, and yeah, it's difficult. Like, at least for me, it's quite difficult. I wrote in my blog too that don't let your grades determine how you think about the language nor what your skill level is, because you could be really good at, say, writing or speaking, but maybe not so good at listening or reading, and that's okay. Everyone's got their forte, so. Yeah,
that's a really good point. I heard this quote, I think it's by Emerson, that says, don't let school get in the way of your education.
Good quote.
I felt that's really true about Sogang.
If you like studying Korean language and culture, then don't let a letter grade or failing a test, tell you otherwise.
But you haven't repeated at all.
Yeah,
so I think that's pretty good going.
I started at level 2. I actually done the Korean immersion program in 2013 at Sogang, and then that's when I did part of level 1. And then I just kind of studied on my own until I came back, and I placed in level 2 barely. Haven't failed yet, but doesn't mean I won't fail coming up in 6th, but we'll see.
I'm pretty sure you won't. You seem to have it down.
I mean, even if I don't do well in one of the levels, then I try not to just let it discourage me too much. But
yeah.
It may just, for a time, I may feel a little sad. But.
Yeah. Oh my god. When I failed level 2, I was so angry.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, because I felt like I had never studied that much in my life ever, and I gave it my best, and I still didn't measure up. That's how I felt. But then, they're grading you by a different standard because they assume that most of the students coming in are like from Asia, and rightfully so. So we're coming from a different background, so we should measure ourselves differently, I think.
Did you mention in one of your other videos that Yonsei or some other school has other levels if you don't come from a Asian language background?
Yeah.
Say Chinese or Japanese or something?
Yeah, that's right. Yonsei has 2 extra semesters. They measure differently, but I mean, if you can keep up with the Asian students, I think you're doing like crazy good.
That is people with an Asian language background. I mean, we're Asian too, but...
I'm not Asian. So, do you have any other language besides English before you started studying Korean?
I studied Spanish in middle and high school. Can I speak Spanish still? Kinda, sorta, not really. Actually, in 2013, when I was studying here, I connected with someone from Mexico.
Ah, cool.
And I actually only used Spanish with them, sending messages back and forth originally online. And then when we met, I initially used Spanish with them, but the girl actually knew English quite well too. But when we first met, I thought I should use Spanish because that's what we had used to communicate for so long. So initially I used Spanish with her for like the first week or 2, and then we switched to English, and then we switched to Korean because we were studying Korean. So that again didn't help with my Spanish, but...
I have no language. I feel like people that have some other language, like 2 languages, have it easier to learn a 3rd language, I guess.
And then I think it depends just how your brain's wired. Like, I think some people are really good at learning languages, and some people are not so good. Some people are better at learning other things. For me, I don't know if I'm good or bad. Maybe I'm somewhere in the middle. I do have to study quite a bit.
When I read your blog on how you study, I was really surprised. I was like, oh, this is how you're supposed to study. This is not what I did. Yeah. It's like, no wonder I had so much trouble.
I don't know, and for me, I still am trying to figure out like the best way to study. And with language, I think you just have to try a bunch of different things and see what really helps it stick. As much as people hate it, I think just repetition and a continued exposure really help. Especially like, say you are lucky enough to have Korean friends to study with. If they can take like your language books and say, okay, I saw you studied history today in your class, and they can say, tell me about what you studied, and so that way you have to recall it and you have to reuse those words. Because otherwise you're not going to use all the vocabulary you learn in class all the time. Like, you're just going to be talking with friends or talking with someone in a restaurant or a coffee shop quite often, but not talking about art or societal problems or...
Can you explain more how you study and how many hours you study?
Yeah, sure. After class, I'll take a break for lunch or coffee or whatever. Just need that break after 4 hours of language class. And then I'll do a lot of vocabulary, like either use an app on my phone or something like that. If it's words I don't know, try to really work on those. Or like make sentences too.
Which app do you use?
I use Quizlet.
Quizlet? I've actually never heard of that. I use Anki, but
okay,
it's not
I've heard
the
of
best.
That. Anyway, making sentences with words and verbs that you maybe have trouble with, help remember them in context, or even in our small grammar book that we have with our student book, they have some sentences in there that are examples, and some of those I found are like much easier to remember how to use grammar or vocabulary than me just trying to make something up. So maybe I'll like read through those. In terms of like review and preview, in the upper levels you really have to preview because they just like hit the ground running during class. They're like, okay, so today we're talking about, I don't know, art history, or we're going to talk about some societal problem, and time to read or listen to something. And then it's like, oh my gosh, all this vocabulary that I should have previewed the night before. So I'll read the stuff or listen to the material the day before if I'm really good. And then I also study with some Koreans that are studying English, so the first hour we'll do English normally, and the second we'll do Korean. And I try to meet, well actually during the term we met twice a week, but now we're really busy, so we've only been able to meet once a week, but it's our vacation now, so that's not a big deal for me. So for them, they normally have some material they want to study, and I just either correct them or give them examples. And then for the Korean part, they normally want me to talk in Korean for like, say, 10-20 minutes, just chit-chatting about whatever comes to my mind. They really try to keep me honest and be like, no, talk in Korean. Like, even if it's something difficult that I don't know, they're like, nope, Korean. And then I'll say, oh, I have trouble with this vocabulary or this grammar. Normally it's grammar because, at least for English, if you want to change the meaning of a sentence, you just add another word or two, and you have another meaning of the sentence, right? But in Korean, you have to know a whole nother conjugation and all this other stuff. And it's very specific context on when you can use certain grammar. So that's when I ask them about situations I can use grammar, and maybe vocabulary questions and expressions. There's a lot of expressions in Korean that you learn in the upper levels from, like, you watch videos, which, again, very specific situations.
Can you give an example of one?
Well, one that's pretty easy to remember is, say in English, I say, hey, let's go have a hamburger, and you say, oh yeah, let's go to Burger King. I was like, Burger King burgers aren't that great. And then you would say something like, well, a burger's a burger, right? It doesn't matter. So in Korean, you have a very similar expression, which is called kogiso kogita, which means if you've been one place, you've been to them all. Like, that place is like just like every other place. That came up in our video class. I think it was in the series High Kick. I don't know if you've seen that drama, but comedy. Anyway, some guy's eating something and they're like, well, if you've eaten one pie, you've eaten them all. Like, that's what the expression means. That's one very short example.
So Nathan has a YouTube channel called...
Yeah, well, the name is called HelloThankYou. The actual channel is if you go to youtube.com/brightness86, like the brightness on your phone. And I've made mostly just travel videos, a lot of hotel room tours, and not actually much about living in Korea, but I'm sure Grace will post my links in the video description so you don't have to remember them.
You would think so.